Isn't it weird that we all have the same 24 hours in a day, but it seems that some people in this time are able to achieve a ton of super impressive feats, while others seem to stagnate and not get a whole lot done at all. You figure if we all have the same amount of time, why is it that some people are getting so much more done? You might ask yourself, is this a me problem? Am I just not focusing enough? Am I not productive enough? Do I not want it enough? And I want to tell you, no. This is not the problem. There are 3 steps that I believe can make you more productive, and all 3 of them are easy to follow and easy to implement. And none of these steps are going to lead to you needlessly sacrificing sleep or needlessly criticizing yourself, as many of these self-improvement gurus online tend to do. Now, the very first thing, if you want to become more productive, is that you have to stop looking at productivity content online, especially on platforms like YouTube and Instagram. When you see all these productivity influencers showing you their extravagant lives and their unbelievably difficult, nonsensical daily routines where they're essentially productive for every single second of the day. Not only are you wasting time that you could be going out and actually just working on your own goals and just living your own life, but you're also getting this idea in your head that you're not doing enough and that there's something fundamentally wrong with the way you're setting up your days. And though sure, maybe you could be slightly more productive in the way you're living, when you see these lives that are quite literally fabricated, these people making up their routines saying, oh, I'm studying for 16 hours a day, or I'm getting 4 hours of sleep so I can work on my business, it's constantly going to make you feel like you're not doing enough. And when it comes to content like this, it's so much better to motivate yourself out of genuine excitement for whatever you can achieve through this productivity, as opposed to fear and negative emotions. So when you look at these people's lives, you constantly feel like you're not doing enough, and it's very easy to shame yourself and call yourself things like lazy and unmotivated. But it's these negative emotions that keep you coming back. When you look at these people's lives and you feel unmotivated and lazy in comparison, you can keep going back to their content, thinking that somehow they're going to offer you the magic pill that's going to make you super productive. And that's great for their business. You keep coming back to their videos because you think that somehow an inkling of their productivity is going to rub off on you. But in reality, most of these self-improvement YouTubers and other content creators are trying to motivate you out of fear. Their game plan is quite literally to get watch time off of your insecurities. And again, if we want genuine motivation, if we want to feel genuinely excited to go out and achieve our goals, then we have to make sure that the motivation we're getting is not based off of fear, it's not based off of insecurity, because when our motivation is based off of these things, we're going to act much more rashly. We're not going to be thinking through our decisions and what's actually best for us. We're going to be essentially taking any route possible to feel more productive and feel like we're fitting in with these other influencers and other content creators. So I think one of the most important things you can do, and at least a good first step, is to get off any form of self-improvement and productivity content and stop comparing your routine to others. And now the next piece of advice, which plays off nicely off of what I've just said about sort of avoiding all this productivity information online, is you have to become better at setting your own goals as opposed to being driven by the goals of other people. Again, when you're constantly watching these hyper successful people with these semi-fabricated lives online, it can be very, very tempting to look at their lives, look at the goals they've set for themselves, and essentially just adapt their goals as your own. Especially when you look at these people with millions and millions of dollars, they have tons of money and all these material things, you might feel like your own goals in comparison are inadequate and that you have to somehow adapt other people's goals because these goals are more legitimate or they're more important than your own goals. And you can deceive yourself and make yourself think that other people's goals are actually really important to you. But one thing you realize after a while is that you're never going to feel as motivated to achieve these sort of nonsensical external goals compared to your own goals that are actually really important and meaningful to you. So I can say for myself that the most productive periods of my life were when I was setting goals that were really aligned to my values and my morals and what I was actually interested in getting out of life. So especially going through college, the times when I was most productive and I was able to stick to my studies the best was when I had specific goals about what I wanted to achieve after college and what my specific next steps were. It was never, oh, I want to make a lot of money because this influencer said so, or I want a lot of clout because this influencer said so. If you want to become much more productive and not only be productive, but actually enjoy the process, a very important step is taking some time and just thinking about what goals are actually important to you. And I think a great way to do this can just be journaling and just writing down your thoughts and thinking about what actually matters to you and what you want to get out of your work or your education or whatever else. But again, like I've said earlier, one problem when it comes to productivity is constantly comparing yourselves to others, not only their lives, but also their goals. So if you're constantly setting goals based off what other people want, it's going to be next to impossible to actually want to achieve any of this stuff. And you're going to notice yourself being much less productive and most likely slacking off, zoning out, really just taking any route to avoid the actual work, because subconsciously you realize that it's not actually what you want to be doing, and it's not actually what you want to be striving for. And now the third and possibly most important step to becoming more productive and becoming much more focused on your own goals is that you have to recognize that a very small minority of the work that you're going to be doing is going to lead to the majority of the results that you get. A lot of people refer to this as the Pareto principle, that a very small percentage of the work you put in is going to lead to the majority of the results. And what this means is that you have to stop focusing on balancing 20 different activities a day, 20 different ways to be productive and use up all your time productively. And you have to start focusing on a few specific important things that are actually going to give you the majority of the results. And again, this is where a lot of these productivity influencers sort of fall off. They get this idea in your head that you have to be productive with everything in your day and that you have to constantly fill your day with productive activities, and not just one, but many different activities. Instead of actually helping you work towards your main goals and what you actually want to get done with your day, they've mastered the art of making you feel productive and essentially just filling up your day with busy work. And this is especially relevant in college. If you've ever met people who would study for hours and hours at a time, but they still wouldn't do well on tests because they were essentially just filling their time up with busy work. They weren't focusing on the key topics, the most important topics for the exam, but instead they just wanted to feel productive, and they were essentially just going over all this irrelevant tangential information just so they could feel productive. When it comes to productivity in general, this is another very common pitfall. You have to realize that all work is not created equal. Just because you're sitting down and working on something doesn't mean it's productive and doesn't mean it's always going to pay off. So you have to actually reflect and think about how valuable the work you're currently doing is. So if you're studying for a test, think to yourself, what information is going to be the most important? What 20% of this work is going to get me 80% of the results on test day? So you could be looking over the slides that the professor gave you with the important relevant information, as opposed to going through the textbook and looking at random information that might be sort of kind of relevant to the test, but it's sort of just side information. You're going to want to become better at identifying what this important information is. And again, this is the opposite of what a lot of productivity YouTubers are going to tell you. They're going to tell you you should be productive for 16 hours a day. You should be filling up every hour of your day with productive work. And essentially right now, I'm telling you that you don't want to be focusing on the time it's actually taking you. If you can be productive in 2 hours of your day, that's awesome. Again, we're talking about feeling productive versus actually being productive. And internalizing this idea of the Pareto principle, that a very small percentage of the actual possible work you can be doing is going to lead to the majority of the results. It's going to save you so much time that you could be using on other things like your enjoyment or exploring hobbies and other passions, as opposed to constantly working for hours and hours on things that just aren't really important because you want to feel productive. So just to recap what we've talked about, if you want to become much more productive in 1 week than most people are in an entire year, there's 3 core things that you have to do. First is to stop looking at productivity information online. You're being misled by people who don't have your best interest in mind. They're trying to motivate you out of fear. And by watching their content, you're not intrinsically being productive. Second, you have to work on your own goal setting. If you're taking the goals of other people, then you're going to be much less motivated to actually achieve them. Once you can actually sit down and think about what matters to you and what you specifically want to achieve, it's going to be much easier, and there's going to be much less friction towards actually working on what you want to do. And third, become more familiar with the Pareto principle, that a very small percent of the actual work you can do is going to lead to the majority of the results. So you want to become better at focusing on what information is best to know if you're studying for a test, or what work is best to focus on if you're doing something like setting up a business or working on anything else. You want to make sure you're not just setting yourself up for busy work, because the amount of time that you're studying or working should never be the goal. Don't fall for the lie that you can only be productive if you're working 15 hours a day. Productivity can be accomplished in any amount of time as long as you're focusing on the right information. Now, I really hope you guys can find this advice useful. If you like videos like this on studying and productivity for college students, I really recommend you subscribe. There's going to be a whole lot more videos like this soon. But until then, I'll see you guys.